Hello once again, it's Mr. Pete, and you're looking at the beautiful MANSON miniature lathe, micro lathe. I hope you have watched episode number 930, which was the introduction to this machine. So I'm continuing now. This is number 931, tips 931. So I'm going to show you how to lubricate it and just a few other things that weren't covered in the other video. I'm not ready to cut metal yet because there's some adjustments to make. I'm going to show you how to take up the wear on the carriage. Remember, this kind of looks like a little monarch lathe, a miniature monarch lathe. Again, here is a 6-inch scale to give you an idea of how really small this machine is. It's a micro lathe. Again, I've said this before, this is not a model so much as it is an actual working miniature lathe. So we can actually cut metal on this. So let's begin. You may remember from the last video that I was not able to get the cover all the way off because of the interference here of this hand wheel. And I had a heck of a time getting this hand wheel off because, in fact, the set screw for it, it's backwards, you know. The set screw was, well, you couldn't get at it. Finally, I got it at it from the bottom, but it was like the Russians doing a tonsillectomy. I think I've told that story before. So anyway, now that I've got that loose, this is the way it actually goes. And I discovered that by looking at some of the old pictures and literature. But that's the correct way so that you have access to the set screw. So I'm going to take that off. And I've already removed one screw, but I'll take the other screw out, and then the cover will pull all the way off. There we go. And again, what a lovely die casting this is. You know, that's what the Tesla cars are all about, are those giga castings, die castings of aluminum. This appears to be zinc, and you can see some of the ejection pin marks on it to get pushed out of the mold. Lovely shape. Now this is a 2-speed machine. The motor runs at constant speed, but there are 2 pulleys here, a large and a small. They're really not too much difference. There's also 2 pulleys here. And the belt looks so delicate, I am very hesitant to try to move it into the other groove because there's interference right here with the spindle. So I'm not going to do that and possibly ruin the belt, and I do not own this. And the belt is in terrible shape right now. This is the motor right here. You see the windings. And I may not have mentioned this last time, but the belt tension can be changed by loosening these and dropping the motor, or raising it, whatever would be the need. I think the belt has stretched. Now in the directions it said probably 90% of the time you want the slower speed, so we are on the slow speed, so that's just fine. Okay, again, this is the main shaft, or the main spindle, coming through here, onto which the center is attached. And it's not easy to get this off or this pulley off, as I just said, but you can see the gears in here. Here's a gear on the main shaft, and we've got several other gears here to step it down and drive the lead screw, shown in the last video. But this little gear right here that I'm tapping on, they look almost like clock gears, don't they? But that gear is attached directly onto the lead screw. Okay, I'm going to lubricate this now and talk about the various parts as I do that, and they recommended 3-in-1 oil for the motor and all the other parts as well, so that's what we got here. And they said to use Vaseline on the gears, believe it or not. I was going to use 90 weight. So this was made in 1948 or 49. I believe that this glass jar of Vaseline marked 15 cents is about equal vintage, so I will use that. There are 2 bearings, oil light bearings, one right here and one here, which we can't see at the moment, and they are the flange type of bearing, like this. This is not the correct one, I'm just illustrating here. And remember that these are pre-lubricated because it is a sintered metal. It's porous, but in order to oil those bearings, we remove the little plug as shown in the last video, and we'll put in a few drops of 3-in-1. Even that looks so thick it didn't go in there very well. But let me wipe that off and then put the plug back on. And some of that oil will get soaked up into those bearings. There are instructions on what to oil, but they did not mention this pulley here. Notice that the shaft doesn't turn, but the pulley does, so I'm going to try to get a little oil in there, and I'm going to use this because it's just a little bit easier to get in there, and that oil will work its way in as well. And while I'm at it here, I'm going to roll it over very carefully because this is delicate, and I'm going to oil these two oilers on the motor, here and here. Now I got to turn it almost upside down in order to do that. Okay, that's it for the motor. I'm going to use a Q-tip, cotton swab, that's way too much, to apply just a little bit of the Vaseline onto, I don't want to get any on the belt, but just a little bit onto the teeth of the gears, and there's one up here, and then when we run this, it will get distributed. There. Now there's also a bunch of gears here in the apron, but I'm not going to deal with that in this video. I will talk about that in another video when I actually take apart the apron on these spare parts. And at that point, I will lubricate the gears in the apron. I made up a little brass ramrod to remove the center. Everything's so tiny. Bam, bam, out comes the center. And I just wanted to tell you that before you put a new center in or replace the center, make sure it's thoroughly cleaned, and just 1 drop of oil is all you need, and spread it around a little bit. But also make sure that you clean the spindle bore, and I'll just use a Q-tip. That hole's smaller than my ear hole, so clean that real well before you ever put the center back in. And remember, there's a thread on there, and when you install a chuck or a faceplate, always put 1 drop of oil, no more than that, or it'll sling out. I'm talking about bigger lathes now, and hit you in the shoulder. But the thing is, when we put a chuck or a faceplate on, maybe it won't come off for 40 years, depending on who's using it, and you don't want it to get locked up. Okay, here's the lead screw. Tiny little lead screw, looks like it's smaller than 3/16, but we need to lubricate each end of it a little bit right there, and I guess we can put a little bit in here to the hole. It'll work its way in, and some oil on this end where it goes into the main casting. And according to the directions, there is a safety feature here, a clutch in here, kind of like there is on an Atlas lathe, that will allow the lead screw to slip like a clutch if you have a problem. Also, just a couple drops of oil on the lead screw itself in different spots so it can work its way in. Okay, I'm going to remove the tailstock so we can service it, and that'll slide right off. This little hex fits between the 2 ways here into this groove, and this is a cam operated type of tailstock, similar to what I have on my closing lathe, just a lever rather than a screw. And when you turn this, it allows the nut there to go up and down. Can you see that? So that's how that works. Now wherever we have, oh, and I wanted to say, this is a 1-piece tailstock. It is not one that can be offset like on the Duo, which I will show you later on. Now whenever we have moving parts, we always want to oil, even though nothing's mentioned. Just a drop right there, a drop right here, and a drop right here. Now I'm going to put this back on, but before I do, just a little bit of oil here on the ways. And I'll put more on later on when the carriage is out of the way, but oil it just like you would your south bend. The quill lock is broken off, probably by 1953, and this is what it should look like. But it's broken off in there. Notice the little slit here that allows it to be pinched and tightened down on the quill, but we can't do it on this one, can we? Let me see if we can get the little center out of there just by backing it up. Now I'm going to take the quill out, and it's just like a South Bend or an Atlas or any other lathe for that matter. Now there are no graduations on it, as you might expect. Come on out of there. Wow, that was a struggle to get out of there, but I finally did. And look at that tiny little piece, even has a keyway. And of course this is the end that holds the center. And this end is threaded. Now I can't get at the threaded rod here, the threaded shaft, so I will oil the nut. Does that sound reasonable? And some oil on this as well, and I'll put it back in. Clean the bore. Too much. My big fat hand's in the way, I know it. Yesterday I took the finest Scotch-Brite that I could find and a brass brush and cleaned the ways. So now with the carriage moved back, I'm able to lubricate the bed. And spread the oil around. Not too much or it'll just drip all over the place. And then you can move the carriage back and forth. A little noisy with the gear. And probably just a little bit of Vaseline on the rack. Here, you won't need much. Okay, this small Allen wrench is the tool post wrench, so loosening up the tool post just a little bit, I can take out the tiny little 1/8 inch cutting tool. And when you examine this, you'll get a kick out of this. There's the tool post, a tiny little wedge. Matter of fact, the wedge, I'll lay it on my thumbnail here to give you an idea how small that is. And even the ring here is machined with the concave. It's a little fiddly, isn't it? But not bad. So I'll put that back on in a few moments. Now you probably have already noticed that there is no compound on these lathes. It's strictly a cross slide, and this is aluminum, and there is a T-slot, of course. This tiny little screw right here is the carriage lock. So counterclockwise, moves freely, and for cross feeding, one would tighten this, but you need a screwdriver to do it, and that tightens it. Oh, not tight enough. There. And I'll take that apart in the next video so you will see what I mean. The cross slide dovetails are very sticky, so I'm going to take it all the way out. Remember, that's a left-hand thread in there, so I'm going to screw it all the way out and pull the cross slide off from the back. Kind of sticky. So there's the little brass nut. Off camera, I'm going to clean this real well with a brass brush. It looks just like a toothbrush. Matter of fact, why off camera? Why not now? That type of motion. And then I will lubricate it again. I did put a little oil on there to help me get it out because it certainly was sticky. And the little nut fell right out, and it's supposed to be held on with this screw. And can you see that there is a tiny little gib? You can see the little cross slide screw in there, so I'll put a couple drops of oil on that. And some oil here in the dovetail. Is my hand in the way? I'm going to put this on off camera because it's going to be fiddly. I know it is. And I realize that this is not threaded on the end. It's just a peg that fits into an unthreaded hole in the brass nut, left hand. Okay, let's turn it on. There we go. Remember, that's the low speed. I forgot what the RPM is. And with the threading lever, then you see that the carriage is moving. Only one speed. Make sure you turn this off when you're done. So that's it. But let's take a look at it running from the end here as well. And you can see the gears. The small one there, of course, again, is on the end of the lead screw. And as you can see, the belt is a little bit loose. Well, that pretty much concludes this video. In the next part, which is part 3, I will go over the mahogany box here and the contents and talk a little bit about these items. And also we'll get back to the carriage here and remove the apron. I'll take this apart so you can see how it's built inside. So you got that to look forward to. Hope you enjoyed this little video, and I'll see you next time. So long for now.